Sex workers of Reddit, who was the grossest customer you've had? The guy that refused to accept that condoms were required. Kept offering more and more money. It ain't about money. My man, if you want it raw within minutes of meeting someone, how on earth am I supposed to trust that it's safe? Pro tip. It's never, ever safe. When I was a phone whore, I'd have pedophiles call me and want me to pretend to be their 6-year-old daughter, niece, neighbor, girl. Edit. I tried to do the first call thinking if I did they wouldn't hurt real kids, but as someone who grew up abused, I just couldn't get over my own rage and disgust. Phone worker here. I had a guy, wanted me to put bodily excretions, roleplay on him. I was so stumped. So I said, if you've been a bad boy, I'll piss on your face. If you've been a good boy, I'll shit in your mouth. Cue the minute long groaning, grunting and screaming the guy did with what I could only assume was the filthiest, never-ending tsunami of spunk, followed with a thank you mistress. I logged off for the day, and did other things. I have no problem with kinks or fetishes, but he acted like he won the lottery. My childhood friend's father, but thank King God he didn't recognize me. I wouldn't kink shame anyone. The worst thing is when a guy smells gross or tries to haggle with me. Take a shower before we get naked, please. A friend of mine worked in the office for an escort agency. The grossest story she told me was about a guy who seemed to have a thing for cutting women up with his long fingernails. After the first complaint, he was put on a list of don't accept bookings from this guy number, but he kept using burners and different names, and every time the girl would complain that he'd basically only want to finger them, but he had long sharp nails and had a habit of scraping, then get agitated when asked to stop, then he'd leave. Just so gross and borderline psychopathic. Edit. Okay, not borderline. I'm not a sex worker, but I did run a bar opposite one of Edinburgh's infamous saunas, sort of legal brothel. The police turned a blind eye to. Anyway, the girls used to come into my bar once their shift was over for a well-earned drink, and so I got to know some of them pretty well. Inevitably, conversation would turn to their clients' kinks. Two spring to mind. The high court judge who came in to be spanked and be told he needed to be punished. Not that exciting, but the one I can never forget was the peanut butter man. He would come in the day before with a massive bag of peanuts for his favorite girl, and book an appointment the next day where the girl would shit on him, and he would smear it all over himself saying, "I'm the peanut butter man," over and over. I could never get that image out of my mind. Edit. Wow, this blew up. This is my most upvoted comment ever. Thank you for the gold and silver, never had these before either. I'm a part-time cam girl. One day a guy paid me $30 to watch him masturbate and barking while wearing his socks on his ears. Lasted less than a minute and it was very surprising. My wife's best friend is a very successful cam girl. She was pregnant, and some dude was paying her thousands to watch her take her pregnancy supplements. She made an absolute fortune when she was pregnant. He would make baby sounds to her while she did it. He would check in on her and make sure that she was hydrated and well fed. He started gifting organic foods over Amazon. I personally saw her play Jenga with her clothes on, and dudes were bidding for which piece to move. I couldn't believe my eyes. I still don't. Someone paid her thousands to have dinner one night. She hired security and he paid for the security to make sure he didn't touch her. It became a steady gig. Free food and thousands of dollars. She started doing the fee thing for a while too. From being a stripper? This guy smelled gross, paid for 5 minutes in a private room. Everything goes well, the typical no touching private parts thing. He didn't want to pay for more time, so I was putting my clothes back on, and he just hugged me really tight, then kneeled and tried to lick my pussy. I was working for a new company, and a man came in who requested to be referred to as the yeast of thought and mind. I wish I'd never booked him. Dude offered me $500 to adopt a dog and have sex with it. I very firmly declined. Was a stripper. The ones who tell you that you look like their daughter's friend are pretty gross. Foot fetish dudes would come in at the end of the night, and the sweatier your feet were the better. Most girls love them though because they give amazing foot rubs and pay you for it. Had a guy come in and lay on the floor and pay me to try to fart on his face. He was dressed like Carlton on Boobin St. Honestly, a lot of girls like ones like this too. They pay really well and you don't have to really do any work. The one who left skid marks on my sheets because he couldn't wash his arse properly. The one who basically shit himself and expected sex to continue. The one who asked if he could come over with 3 of his friends after midnight on a weeknight, so was absolutely high on something, and only offered me $50 a piece to run a train, and he honestly thought it was a fair offer after looking at my hourly of AU $600. The numerous men who didn't understand how to wash under their foreskins. The numerous men with insulting offers for bareback sex and absolutely no history of being checked for stis because I'm married so I'm clean. Like that wedding ring has some spell of repel chlamydia on it. It's mostly the hygiene factor, honestly. If you have a weird fetish that most people would consider gross, but you're respectful about bringing it up, and you adhere to as many hygiene precautions as possible, and you're prepared to pay well for it, sex workers won't care. Edit. I know a lot of people are expecting either horror stories of abuse or weird kinks, but that's not really the truth. I've had people pay to pee on me, I've peed on people, I've pooped on them. You don't know stage fright until you've had to poop on someone. I've fisted people, I've had clients obsessed with armpits or feet or ears or farting. But while it might be off-putting and not something that turns me on, it doesn't classify as unusual or gross. They pay for a service that I am happy to provide. Not a prostitute, but I was sexting with a customer who wanted to rub my vagina juices all over his gums, because all of his teeth had been removed the year prior, and had been replaced with metal plates in his gums. He said this all in the same breath. Sir. So, former camgirl here, I would have assumed this guy was trolling, but he just seemed so earnest and had already tipped me like $600 that night. So, I have a cat, and he wanted me to go get a piece of cat shit from her litter box, fuck it up my ass, and then poop it back out for him. He said he had $3,500 to spend to make it happen. Obviously, I didn't do it, and decided that was enough camming for me that evening, and bid him goodnight. Still, I think about that guy a lot. That fucking guy. I wonder if he ever got anybody to do it. Edit. Good. Yes. That was a wise $5 you spent on this comment, kind stranger. Edit 2. Lol at half the people responding to this thinking it sounds like a good deal. The guy who refused to pull out even after he came. He became semi-flaccid and was still trying to stay inside as much as he could. Then when he finally was flaccid, the D slipped out itself. Well, a friend of mine said they had to use a gaming YouTuber voice during it, so that, probably that. I had a guy that just wanted me to spit full globs of phlegm in his mouth while laid on his back with his mouth wide open. I'm rarely grossed out, but I just can't deal with copious amounts of spit or phlegm. It took so much effort not to gag throw up just from seeing it slide past his tonsils. On the other end of the spectrum, I had a guy who liked to just lay on the sofa while I sat on him and watched TV. Human furniture fetish is definitely my favorite type of booking. Condom avoiders, those who just plain reeked of bogue, cheesy feet, dirty ass, too many cigarettes, and who were complete strangers to a toothbrush. People who were scabby and scaly with suspicious sores in places you definitely don't want to see license. The guy who loved people to fart on him and in his mouth wasn't too flash either, but you got a laugh out of it at least. Not my story, but I heard it from a friend. You know how girls will spit on your dick to lube it up before blowing you? There was this one customer who told his girl for the night that it was wasteful to spit on his dick and requested that she spit in his mouth instead. For every time she spit in his mouth, he would give her $10. I have 2 different guys that I'll never forget. The first was one that wanted my feet to be filthy, dirty and stinky if possible. Then I had to smash one foot in his face and get him off with the other foot. The other guy wouldn't let me turn on any lights at all, and when I got undressed I touched him and found his one ball was the size of a pillow. It freaked me out so bad I told him I started my period and needed to leave pronto. There's many more, but these 2 guys always stand out. I work at a sex store. We have a guy whose kink is cleaning. So he went to the arcades, glory holes and cinema, and pulled all the used condoms out of the garbage can, and ate the coom in them. We also have a dude that likes to lick doorknobs and another one who smells the used paper towels. Edit. Thanks for the gold. My job is wonderfully weird and I have way too many stories. Edit again. Dang, guys. Thanks for the silver. Not really a sex worker, but I stripped for a bit in college. The amount of older guys saying things to me like tell me your real age or don't worry your little secret is safe with me, while grinning terribly was always gross. I look young so that wasn't very pleasant. It got worse when they would try and blackmail me into actual sexual contact by saying they'd reveal my actual age. Fortunately, I was 19, so could just tell them to go ahead and do it. A client that I really liked once sharded on a white hotel bedspread. I almost cried. I had to wash the tuna in that one spot and flip it and sandwich a towel on the bottom and a top sheet with a towel underneath. Not enough money in the world for that one edit. Oh wow. My most upvoted comment is about someone who paid me for sex shitting on a bed in front of my very eyes. $10 to literally make his bed. A guy who worked part-time as a scout leader had bottles and bottles of fizzy pop in his hallway for when he invited some of the scouts round to his house. He had about 4 brown teeth. Well, I'm no sex worker, I was actually a computer repairman, and this is actually a true story. An older lady tried to pay me with sex with her retarded daughter. I'm no longer an active sex worker, but I was when I was 16, and if that shocks you, sorry, I had to be the one to show you what a tiny bit of the real world looks like. And somebody brought me into their car, which was normal. It was a minivan, and he had all the back seats put down, nothing shocking yet. Then he told me to lay down on my back, and said he was gonna shit on me. I was like, nope, and I decided to bail, which is a very intense choice to make if you're working for somebody, because they will cut the hell out of your pay for it, and he, who was twice as big as me, beat the hell out of me. But he knew he couldn't chase me when I got out because after getting out of the back alley, we would be in public. That was one of the worst days of my life, but I still managed to hide that any of that summer happened, so I guess I got off a bit easy. This thread feels dark, like a bee thread at 3 a.m. A customer for a custom video of farting and talking about what I was doing during. No amount of money was worth that. Thank God I had the freedom to decline that order and block him. I'm not sure I'd count myself as a sex worker, but a few months back I was in a dark place financially and resorted to a sugar daddy website. I talked to a lot of people, and most of it led nowhere, as they wanted more than I could offer. I wasn't willing to have sex, only fool around. I'm only 18, so I wasn't comfortable with anything else. Eventually I ended up meeting an older man, late 50s early 60s, in a wheelchair. He seemed safe enough after talking over a cup of coffee, so I got in his car. We'd agreed beforehand that there would be no sexual contact at all on the first meeting. I also reminded him of that several times during our coffee and in the car. He still tried, and his persistent pushing for it convinced me a little bit would be fine. It wasn't. He ended up being quite violent, and the whole experience was very uncomfortable. A little bit turned into a lot, and I was too scared to say he was crossing a line. After a while I had worked up the courage to get out of the car after making up an excuse for having to leave early. Walking back through the city looking for a bus stop, I felt very ashamed about crying in public. I never talked about the encounter ever again. This is the first I've spoken of it. I don't think he's to blame in this situation. It's 100% on me. I put myself in that situation. I underestimated him due to the wheelchair, and overestimated my own ability to say no. If I was a more confrontational and confident person, I'm sure it could have ended a lot sooner. Still, the money helped me not be homeless. My heart goes out to all the people who do this type of work. You're all incredibly strong people. I have so much admiration for your strength. Be safe. Way back in the day when I was a stripper, I was giving a dance. The room was dark, and I was giving a lap dance to a usual customer. The customers were allowed to touch as long as it wasn't any no-no zone. So I was sitting on his lap, no grinding, his hands to his side, and I randomly felt warm goo hit my back. I have no idea how I didn't notice anything sticking out, or how he managed to get off with no physical touch, but I was mortified. I got up, demanded my pay, and quickly ran to the bathroom. Had to have the bouncer escort him out. Yes, not a sex work, but a sexy worker. Amateur sex worker here. I was my own worst customer. Jacked off and went to sleep. It was gross. I went through a brief stint of sleeping with men from Craigslist for money when I was going through a very rough financial time when I was 20. It was a very dark time. There were some unshowered dudes, some who smelled bad, overweight, sure. But if they were nice, their looks didn't bother me. The grossest ones were the guys who forced anal without asking, refused to wear condoms, or haggled with money. You have to clean the jizz off the glass before it streaks. Not really gross, but a guy told me to marry him about 10 different times. I work as a chat girl, so basically he paid to talk to 10 girls, talk to them about a day each, and asked each of them for their hand in marriage. What a weird guy. I got to the man's house, and he wanted me to pour bleach on my titties. I literally just walked right out and never looked back. I'm a dancer at a topless strip club, no removing bottoms allowed. I had this guy coming to see me about once a week. He'd give me 100 to 150 every time he came in, but each time try to push the boundaries further and further. Eventually he kept trying to whip his dick out, and I had to tell him no. Next time he came in, while I was turned around shaking my ass in his face, he pulled his dick out, condom already on, grabbed my hips and tried to put me onto his dick. Seriously shitty. Another one of my friends was doing a half hour with a guy, and she flipped over and farted in his face. She was mortified, but he tipped her 20 at the end, so he must have enjoyed it. Literally tonight at work, a girl got fired for prostitution. She was screaming at the manager the whole time, in the middle of the room, all the customers watching her. I only gave him a handjob. It's not like I fucked him. Every single girl that goes back there fucks not true. What's the big deal? I was just jacking him off. She's been a dancer for a while. She claimed another girl told her it was okay, and that's why she did it. Bullshit. You know the rules, and you got caught. It happens. I've seen girls sucking and fucking literally 2 feet from me. I had a girl wave and smile at me as she was jacking a dude off. In full view of the camera lol. I had a customer who liked to wear a bonnet, suck on a pacifier, and wear a diaper under his pants. He liked to call me mommy and be spanked. And he paid well for it. I had a guy that loved the smell of sweaty ass. He would always tell me when he was coming in, always near the end of the night, so I wouldn't go to the dressing room and freshen up as much as I usually would, and he would literally give me 200 just to stand in front of him, ass cheeks apart while he smelled it. I guess the first one was the grossest, the rest of them were just weird. I have so many stories from dancing lol. Online sex worker here, but had a customer send me a script for a custom video where I pretend to be a 13-year-old girl, call him daddy, and talk about my day at school, what it's like being a young girl, etc. Instantly blocked. My aunt's best friend was an escort in the late 90s. One day she calls my aunt sounding upset and proceeds to tell her that the customer she just had wanted her to wear his daughter's clothing and speak like his daughter. The grossest part? The daughter was 2. Should probably add the serious tag for this one.